Welcome, welcome to Gray Eminence Media. It's nice to have you guys with me. This is part 2 of the analysis of Vivek's interview with Andy on this podcast. So let's get into it.
Those two things, without asking anybody else for permission, that much I know I can get done. Now, there will be some legal scholars who would tell you, and the people who advise Trump and otherwise, oh, no, you can't do that. That requires congressional permission. And if you guys want to go into details, I can go into details that say, no. And this is where Trump got duped, right? They told him you can't fire federal employees because they have these so-called civil service protections, right? Special protections that say if you're a federal employee, you can't be fired. Mm-hmm. You got to read the law. It doesn't apply to mass layoffs, right? The whole point is if you work for, I don't know, the EPA.
Yeah, you can't single them out.
Yeah, I can't say because you disagree with me, but you're some environmental monitor that I can't fire you. Fine. You could disagree or not with the policy. That's what the law says. If I'm saying,
I believe Vivek went to Yale Law School. So I believe he is trained as a lawyer. And I think this is why he has this expert analysis and insight onto this topic right here. So I think he has a lot of points.
Because we're cleaning house and this stimulates the economy. And that's actually one of the justifications in the law. If it stimulates the economy or eliminates redundant agencies, you can shut down agencies, you can fire large numbers of people. And that's absolutely what I'm bringing to Washington, D.C. And so it does take a pretty rare combination of somebody coming in from the outside with complete disregard and disrespect for that professional political class. And I didn't realize it, but apparently that disdain came across on the debate stage last week. I didn't mean it that way, but I just do have a natural disdain for the professional managerial
I think that only
class.
helps you.
But you have to also know what you're talking about when it comes to the law, or else you're going to be duped by those same people who are your advisors that tell you all the reasons you can't do it. So then we do it, and I've also studied the current Supreme Court, which I give Trump a ton of credit for. One of the most valuable things he did, and it's important. They agree with me 6-3 on this. So then we go in there and get that done. By the time I'm leaving in January 2033, the Supreme Court's already said, no, this guy's right, 6-3. The next guy who takes over after me, I will relish in handing over the keys to whoever that person is, doesn't have his hands tied in the same way that my hands are tied nominally on day one. And so that's how I look at it. This is 8 years.
I'm still a pretty young guy, but in terms of all of the candidates for president that have ever run for office, at least in my lifetime, Vivek is actually getting down to the nitty-gritty, getting into details about how he's going to do certain things. He's also talked about how he's not going to make campaign promises on certain issues that need congressional approval or congressional action, right? Certain things that Congress can only pass. And so it's really refreshing to see a candidate for president that's actually willing to say, hey, I'm not going to make X, Y, and Z campaign promises because that requires congressional action. However, for the campaign promises that he has brought up, that would only require executive power, which he would be able to exercise if he was elected president. So it's really refreshing to see someone that is actually going into detail, and not just going into detail, but he's able to distill complex legal frameworks to the average person. So that's really admirable.
Parts of it are going to feel like a sharp poke in the eye. I'm sure it's nice to ride around on Air Force One, but it's less of an upgrade for me than it is for many people than it was for Barack Obama.
That's
getting
right.
into that position from community organizer. That's not why I'm in this.
Okay,
I think
Obama, that was 2 presidencies ago. He was, Barack Obama chose to be a community organizer, right? Like he went to Columbia, he went to Harvard Law. I'm sure there were other options for him. And I think Barack Obama always wanted to be president. I think he always wanted to be the first black president. And so community organizing was his way of kind of laying down that framework, that groundwork. So for Vivek and for a lot of these Republican politicians to continually, incessantly, perpetually attack Obama is actually a good thing for President Obama, because, for him to be constantly mentioned and attacked, he's definitely left his mark in American history, but in world history. So, Vivek, come on, man, stay on point here.
I think that I didn't serve this country, actually. I think there's a lot of ways to serve a country. You don't need to apologize for being a capitalist. Yeah. But I didn't serve the country in a civic sense. I did it as a capitalist. And this is going to be my way of doing it. And I know to a lot of people that, and maybe in some measure it is just ridiculous to say, yeah, I'm going to do my national service. I'm going to do it by being U.S. president. But the honest truth is we all have to look ourselves in the mirror and ask ourselves, how am I going to use the gifts that God has given me, that God has given you, that God has given you to make your maximal contribution? And I don't think being the president's the most important job in the country. I really don't. He has an important role to play, but I'm not sure if it's more important to be a president or a pastor right now. In fact, you could make an argument that a pastor is going to fill that vacuum with something far more meaningful than a U.S. president ever can. It's not my job to be a pastor, but I will fill it with the vacuum of national identity. That's something the president can do, and that's something I'm confident I can.
I think you're hitting on a super important part of the puzzle here. What you just said about it not being important, this is no different than us running our companies.
Yes.
Like, people will say to you, oh, you're the CEO or you're the chairman or you're this, and it's such a big deal. And it's like, no, it's just a part of the requirements to do the mission.
Totally.
And president's just like that. That's how I look at it as well. I see it the same way you're seeing it. And I think that actually, if we're being honest about what's going to fix the country, it isn't going to be a president. It's going to be individuals in their communities deciding that
it's not going to be the president, but Andy, you are a diehard supporter of Trump. This thinking of, oh, well, the president's not going to change the country. It's up to us. It's up to the everyday person, the common person. Well, please back it up, because a lot of your fellow Trump supporters went to go storm the Capitol. It was an insurrection. It was a rebellion. It was treason. And the people that were locked up, charged, they're lucky that they're not put to death, because that's what is actually required when you're engaging in treason, when you're trying to overthrow a government. Imagine if these insurrectionists got their way. If it was up to them, Mike Pence would be hung. They would be essentially, it will be essentially an overthrow of the American government. So I don't really buy all this stuff that he's talking about.
Standard of life, meaning culturally, and then spreading that to their neighbors, to the left, to the right, to their sons and daughters, to their cousins. And when people lift themselves up, other people start to look at them and they say, what's he doing? What are you doing, Vivek? You look great. You've been taking care of yourself. You've been working hard. I see your family. They're great. How do you do it? And then that spreads.
Totally.
And that's what we're talking about here. I feel like we have been lulled to sleep as a culture to believe that we are dependent on somebody 2,000 miles away to make the decisions for us, when in reality, the decisions they make have very little effect on
That's
our
very
lives.
true.
That's right.
Then why are you interviewing Vivek? And Andy is absolutely correct. I mean, whether it was Trump, Obama, Biden, Bush, Clinton, in the grand scheme of things, does that affect your daily life? Trump is not holding you back. Obama's not holding you back. Whoever's the president isn't holding you back. If you want to pursue a degree in biology, you can do that. If you want to apply for a certain job, you can go ahead and do that. But he's saying all of these valid points, right? Andy is saying all of these valid points. However, if that's the case, then why are you interviewing a presidential candidate? Doesn't make much sense.
And what you're talking about, American culture, American pride, American identity, American values, these things have to come from you guys listening. They don't come from Vivek. They don't come from Trump. They don't come from anybody else. They don't come from Andy. They don't come from anybody. They come from you living it. And I agree with that statement. I think that's the best thing you said so far, honestly.
And the truth is, it's a responsibility that comes with part of the role of being the CEO. Then it's not that it's the most important position, but part of the position in a company, or part of the position in being the CEO of the executive branch and leading this country, is here's the standard I want you all to hold me to. Do you have kids, by the way?
No.
Okay. You guys
I have two.
You have two kids? I got two sons as well.
We weren't able to have kids, so it was like, it's not that we didn't want to, it's just it never happened for us.
Okay, well,
but I have
you're young, and there's a long
extreme
life ahead.
I have an extreme sense of responsibility to our younger generation.
Perfect. And you know what? Life is long, and there's many ways to that.
Well, you're raising about 400 of them in here.
To see how that exactly.
A few on the end of this microphone too.
Some of them look pretty. They look like they're doing fine under your tutelage here.
Their dad didn't leave.
I want you to be able to look at each of those people out there, those young people on the basketball court and the gym. You to look at your two kids. I want to look at my two sons and tell them in good conscience that whoever that is in the White House, I want you to grow up and be like him.
BS.
That's a high standard.
Yes.
BS. Really? You want your son to be like Trump? Now, in terms of financial success, notoriety, 100%, you would want your child to achieve success within the finance category, in the public notoriety category, right? In terms of Trump's framework and blueprint. However, this is 100% cap. He would never want one of his sons to be like Trump as a human being. Come on, dude. Good politics, though.
But I think that's half the job of the next U.S. president is just lead and live your life in a way that allows young people to say, okay, I want to grow up and be like him, or a parent to want to tell their kids that same thing. It's the revival of a kind of national character that we missed. I think we have missed for a really long time. I think that's half the job. Half the job is getting done what the U.S. president can get done. And if we're lucky and use that momentum, that actually puts us in a stronger position to get a few laws passed too, or better yet, a few laws repealed. And then call that a day. That's 8 years' work. Keep us out of war, grow the economy, drop the mic, next guy take over.
Yeah.
That's it.
Go live your life.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's what the presidency is. And then there's a job for everybody else to play. From CEO to pastor to parent to school board member. There's a job for everybody else to play too.
This whole, everybody has a role. Everybody has a job. Everybody needs to understand their strengths and abide by those quote unquote strengths and fulfill their role. This is certainly part of his Indian upbringing, where the way that he's talking is, he said, well, my gifts are, to serve my country, it's to be U.S. president, right? He sees himself as receiving this gift from God. And his way of serving the country is not to enlist in the military. It's not to become an officer in the military. It's not to be a senator or a governor. It's not to be a community organizer. It's not to feed the homeless. His gift is to become the president of the United States, the most powerful country that has ever existed on the face of the earth thus far. And So this is definitely Brahmin thinking, right? If you don't know what the Brahmin caste is, please go ahead and do your research. There is a bit of me that agrees with him. We all have different gifts and strengths that we have received from God. But the way that he's talking, it seems like everybody has these strengths and weaknesses, and go ahead and play your role, essentially. There's no sense of you can increase certain strengths, right? You can focus on certain strengths, or you can develop new strengths that might be tied to whatever strength that you already have. And you're able to learn and grow and move into different positions of power, or move into different positions in your career. So this kind of talk is a little bit troubling to me.
Into this trap. I think the right especially does, actually. But I think all of us do in some way, is expecting that there's going to be some political messiah coming from on high to save us. Otherwise, it doesn't work that way. Yeah. It's not Andy from this show. Nope. It's not me from the White House. Nope. If we're going to be saved, it is going to be because we save ourselves.
Facts. Good point. I'm not a hater. I'm not a supporter. I'm just analyzing, and that's a great point.
Easily, I'm going to do my part as the U.S. president, but it's like, back to that mentality of, well, are you going to sell me this hope and dream? And how do I know you're going to do that for me? I'm not. I'm going to do what I'm telling you I'm going to do, which is my part. But if we want to be saved, you better do your part to save yourself too. It's going to require all of us to actually, what I call a great uprising in this country, but you have to play your part too.
It's a cultural revolution.
That's the good kind.
That's what we're talking, right? We're not talking about
cultural counter revolution is really what we need.
Shit. If we're being real about it, that's what we're dealing with. But that cannot be implemented by anybody else but the individual.
Yep.
And that's what people are failing. And I don't know what that is. I don't know what that savior syndrome thing is that's going on. I think
because we allow
a lot of it
to take a lot of the arrows.
Dude, I think a lot of it came.
This isn't savior syndrome. This is human nature. This is not savior syndrome. This is human nature. Let me explain. In the United States, we don't have a royal family. We don't have a monarchy. So what we have is the vote, and we vote people in power, right? However, as human beings, we elevate certain families, Clintons, Bush, and we have this knack as human beings to create dynasties on our own. And there are people that want Michelle Obama to run for office and replace Joe Biden. And so I don't think this is a savior syndrome. This is just human nature. So even if you create a country like the United States with no royal family or anything like that, human beings just naturally gravitate towards a family or a group of people or whatever that is, race, family, religion, a certain sect, a certain niche of human being. Humans will just naturally start to put those types of people in power, right? So I think they're not analyzing the situation correctly. I guarantee you, if you give a Trump supporter the option of Donald Trump Jr. To succeed his father, they'll vote for him. And no one's forcing them to do this. This is just human behavior.
I think a lot of it comes from Trump being so different than most of the other politicians that have been around for a long, long time, that people have attached their identity to this man. And by the way, I voted for Trump both times. And I actually like Trump.
He's a great president. Yeah, I said on the stage, it rankled a lot of people when I said that.
No, it is what it is.
I said he's the greatest president of the 21st century. People are like, what did he just say? Let's just go through the list. George Bush.
You can't argue with what he did.
Barack Obama. Joe Biden. Yes, he was the best president of the 21st century. We have to
take all of the shit that people don't like about him off the table, and because it's all surface level bullshit.
It's not surface level. Guarantee you, this guy, if he had a daughter, and if he gave them the option, just as a human being, not policy or anything like that, would you have your daughter date a Barack Obama type of a person or a Donald Trump type of a person? And even if we made, okay, let's say he's uncomfortable with the fact that Obama is black, right? So let's make Obama white, right? Everybody knows that a father would rather have his daughter marry a Barack Obama type compared to Trump. It's not surface level BS. What he's saying is BS, right? Because he wants to protect this guy. So, I understand that, but this isn't surface level stuff. I, as a human being, Trump has done a lot of things, and that's not a political thing. This is just facts. This is just observation. So he's full of it. Andy.
Guy got more shit done than anybody else. That is it. And that's how we should be judging people. If you and I are running a company and this is my vice president over here, and I got this guy over here that wants to be vice president, and this guy's tweeting some weird shit, but he does a better job, guess who's getting the job? The guy that tweets the weird shit. Okay? Exactly. That's what it is. And this savior complex comes from everybody attaching their identity to him because he's been so different than everybody else, thinking that there's nobody else like him, when in reality, if there was nobody else like him, he wouldn't draw 100,000 people to his freaking rallies for 30 days in a row prior to the election, which, by the way, was great optics and smart strategy. But the point is, I agree with you.
Yeah, and I think we got to move. We got to graduate from that, right? We got to graduate from the Messiah complex, and I think it takes somebody who, because we're human beings too, right? I mean, let's be honest. I mean, there'll be times where if I'm in a room for 1,000 people, we'll have them captive, and people standing up, cheering, chanting at the end of it. It can get to your head.
Yeah.
Oh, we're human beings. But
this is so good on Vivek's part. He's so truthful and natural, and he's saying that, as a human being, aka Vivek, as Vivek, when I'm in front of a crowd and I can captivate 1,000 people and you have them cheering and standing up, it can get to your head. These kind of talking points that's what's going to put him over the top if he does actually become US president. It's these honest moments like these that you don't really see from politicians. So he's doing good work.
Want a Messiah, and so then you sort of dupe yourself into thinking, well, I am one. And that's, I think, where it goes wrong, even with the best of what we've had, right? In the 21st century, I think that's where we fell short. Back to that question, what is it inside our heart that makes us want to bend the knee? We're going to bend the knee to something unless you fill it with the real thing. And so I'm a vehicle for delivering a vision of national identity. It's not about me. What it means to be an American. MAGA, which I, in some sense, consider myself part of. America First, I definitely consider myself part of. That is bigger than one man.
Yeah.
Doesn't belong to Trump.
No, it's all of us.
It doesn't belong to me.
Right.
It belongs to all
Facts.
of us, right? And that's the mentality of leadership to take our America First agenda to the next level. That's what I think it's going to take.
I like the America First better than MAGA. A lot better.
It just means more. What does it mean? We put
also,
America first.
If we're being real, America hasn't always been great to everybody. So when you say make America great again, certain classes of people say, well, what the does that mean? But if you say America first,
put America first, and that means all Americans first.
I agree.
South side of Chicago to Kensington to Maui, put them first over some Ukrainian government employees.
Facts.
People don't really know this. They say
Facts.
Equipment, the media doesn't really make this clear. We are literally spending our taxpayer dollars, the way more taxpayer dollars going into the government that should, are literally paying the salaries of Ukrainian government officials right now. So the Ukrainian government's payroll.
That's insane.
Right? The HR department in Ukraine's government is literally printing money coming,
their
processing the checks.
Spokesperson is an American.
Yeah.
Their spokesperson is an American. Like it's a transgender American. Like, dude.
It's a dude. It's a chick.
Yeah, well.
No, it's a chick with a dick.
Listen, we got a game to play, guys. I'd love to talk with you all day, but we got to play this game.
Okay.
All right.
Let's do the game.
We got something for you.
All right. So tell us the game, DJ.
Well, we like to have a good time on the show. First of all, it was a great conversation. Loved the intro.
Oh, dude, we could go on for 12
I love
hours.
It. But that's what this game hopefully is going to give us the opportunity to do.
Okay.
So today, guys, we're going to be playing America is in Jeopardy.
Is it Jep
Party? Geo Party. I like
Geo
it.
Party.
Well, listen, copyright issues. I went to public high school. I mean, there's a couple of different reasons.
We do need education.
There's a couple of reasons. I went to public high school. I'm black. Yo, I hate black people like this that self-deprecate. You worthless scumbag. You low self-esteem, worthless piece of BS. It's disgusting.
Education reform. Yeah.
Sometimes it works in your favor, though. I like
Yeah. I'm black. He doesn't even know what the history of Africa is. He doesn't even know what. He has no idea.
I just didn't want to get sued, honestly.
That's smart.
Thing. But yeah, so we're all get into this. So
how's this going to work?
So we'll go through our categories, right? And then you guys can pick a category, pick your dollar amount. We'll go through it, and we'll get to talk a little bit about those issues. So let's go through our categories, shall we? Yeah.
Now, who gets the first pick? I think we got to give the guest the first pick.
I think the guest gets the first one for sure.
Okay.
But let's go through the categories. Let's see what we got. We got COVID-19, the greatest reset. See what I did there?
I like it.
Yeah.
I mean, I like the cleverness of it. I don't like the actual substance of it.
I was about to say that's gonna go viral. He said he loved COVID.
The greatest reset. I don't like the great reset. It's the greatest reset.
We got Bidenomics. We got the deep state. Immigration. Crime in America, and then our last category, Russia-American war.
All right.
Okay? So those are our categories, guys. If you guys are watching on YouTube, make sure you like, subscribe, and comment. Play along with us. Let us know in the comments how you guys are doing on these categories. But so with that being said, Vivek, pick your first category.
Let's go with the deep state for 200.
Deep state for 200. This INGO is the International Organization for Public-Private Corporation and engages the foremost political, business, cultural, and other leaders of society to shape global, regional, and industry agendas.
So I'm supposed to name what the organization is.
What is?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What is the World Economic Forum?
Yes, absolutely.
There we go.
200 for Vivek. Yeah. So let's talk. Do you have any?
Why is his voice so high? Little weirdo.
Let's put this shit to rest first of all.
I mean, I'm convinced that it is never going to be put to rest. So I'm at peace with that.
Yeah,
because people should be skeptical.
Mm-hmm.
So I have been
probably. I'm sorry. I already know the whole. They nominated you as a young global leader. That's bullshit.
Yeah,
I've seen that.
They actually did that to Greitens too.
They did.
They did it to Musk. They did it to Glenn Beck. So so the people who. So I don't think it was innocent, but I don't know for sure. They named me. I was the biggest critic. Look at the person who's been exposing their ESG agenda over the last 4 or 5 years. I don't like to pat myself on the back, but there's probably nobody in the United States of America who has exposed their poison more than me over the last 4 years, maybe save for Glenn Beck. Okay. Yeah. The reality
I know another guy.
Yeah, what was that guy's name?
That Randy Kinsella guy. He's got a podcast. I forgot what it's called.
I've heard good things about this Kinsella. So the reality is, though, it's the old world. That's what this is about. The old world monster was that we, the people, cannot be trusted to sort out our differences on climate change or racial injustice. They think their agenda, and this is what you have to understand to get it. If you really want to get it, like there's the superficial version that these guys are evil, they want to destroy us, they're coming after us, etc. But if you really want to get it, the most frightening part of all is that they actually think they're doing it.
Facts.
You're good.
Oh yeah, they believe they're doing.
They believe
the
it's
right
not just
thing.
for their good.
Yes,
they believe they care about you so much that they have to do what's right for you because you can't be trusted to do it yourself on existential questions like systemic racism or climate change, which is really
okay. Systemic racism, right? I mean, the government did have to get involved with that, right? So it's a 50-50. There are certain issues where the masses or the common people do have the tools to solve certain major issues. However, there are certain issues that the common person is just not smart enough to solve, right? I mean, even when you think about the founding of the United States, George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, all of these people were not commoners. You know, George Washington's family have been wealthy for a long time. And I'm talking about his ancestors, George Washington's ancestors. They were, he didn't come from a line of serfs. Okay, so this idea that, the common person, yeah, they can solve things by themselves, everything. We don't need anybody else that is not common to solve our issues. I mean, even look at Vivek. Look at his ancestry. He's not a common person. Get out of here, man. But it's good politics. It's good politics.
That was the old world view, because the kings in the old palaces of old world England, they said, we love our subjects. I love my subjects like my children. My children can't be trusted to vote and actually decide how they're going to sort out their differences.
That's not just old world. That's new world too. Like I said before, only white male land owning. It's not good enough just to be white. It's not good enough just to be male. But you had to be a white male landowner in the United States to vote in the beginning of our country. The common person also involves what? Women, right? Women are people. The new world, quote unquote, didn't grant the right to vote for women. So this is completely inaccurate.
Subjects as your children. Well, the United States of America in 1776 said hell no to that vision. That's exactly.
No, Vivek, if you were around in 1776, you'd be cleaning someone's shoe and you wouldn't be voting. So what the hell are you talking about?
76. And every so often, that old world monster starts to rear its head again. And that's what the modern World Economic Forum is. The mountaintops of Davos are the.
I do agree with that, though. So there are some idiotic things that this dude says that is just inaccurate, and he's actually trying to dupe you. And 50% of the time, he has really, really good points that are just facts. Like, you cannot argue with certain things that this man says, right? And this is how people do it. You got to mix in a little bit of truth with the BS that you're saying so that you can get voted in.
That's what it's about.
So what do we do with them?
So I think that mostly what the United States has to do is make sure that we are first building the walls to protect our own sovereignty. Look at those multilateral institutions. I mean, the WHO, sure, that's an easy one. Don't fund an institution that's fundamentally hostile to our sovereignty. I think we have to take a long, hard look at our continued involvement in the UN itself.
Oh, dude, we got to be gone out of all of that.
I mean, the UN, why on earth are we funding an institution where...
Because the majority of the funding of the UN comes from the United States. And therefore, we are the biggest shareholders of these quote unquote international institutions. They're not really international. These are American institutions. Sure, there are some other countries that can join and, take part. Vivek knows this, but he's playing stupid to the commoners. And these commoners are the podcast hosts, right? All of these international organizations, the U.S. controls them. And it's smart to have these international institutions that have major impact in the world. And you can cloak yourself as an international entity, but in reality, it's American. So what government would not want to have that type of manipulation, that type of control? So what are you talking about, Vivek? Oh, right. You got to play stupid to get that vote. Gotcha.
Council is staffed by like by the likes of like Venezuela and North Korea on the UN. This is madness. And so I think the U.S. needs to get itself out of these multilateral institutions that are hostile to U.S. interests. Do we need to deal with other countries, certain other countries? Sure, we'll do it bilaterally.
Yeah. Okay.
Get out of this.
Let's see. If he becomes president, which I don't think he will, but if he does become president, let's see if he's going to withdraw participation in the WHO, the UN, and a bunch of other international entities. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. Come on.
This multilateral globalist view that we're one nation amongst co-equals. No. We're the greatest nation on earth. We're going to stand up for our interests.
We are the greatest nation on earth. Yes. And we're not treating other countries as equal partners. What are you talking about, dude? We go around the world with a big stick and we do what the hell we want to do. So what are you talking about? We don't treat other countries as our equals. Even like European countries, the EU. We don't treat the EU as our equal. We've been sunning Europe for the past like 50 years. This is just cap.
Of the world. You want to know why? Because when the U.S. is strong at home, that's the last best hope that any other free nation has.
Are we not strong at home?
Correct.
Are we not strong at home? Have we really experienced war? I'm talking about real war, not a terrorist attack, not a mass shooting. Have we experienced actual war on our soil? Okay, maybe with the Indian Wars, right? I mean, that's valid, but we were taking other people's land, and not just that, we were actually invading nations. I mean, these aren't just a bunch of human beings living on the land of North America. These were complex societies, nation states. So yeah, I mean, sure, we've experienced, quote unquote war. I think that's more of an invasion. But once we've dominated the landmass, not the entirety of North America, but a good chunk of North America. Once we've dominated that, have we really experienced war? No, we haven't. We are strong at home. We are strong at home. What are you talking about?
So that's what we need to stand up for.
I love this. I agree.
I love it,
Yeah.
man.
So defund.
Defund.
Yes, and they will crumble.
NATO
right
as well.
Now, we're paying NATO's. NATO's moment. These things should have been task.
We are aligned here,
right?
Yeah.
I mean, the moment has long passed. It was to deter the USSR.
Yeah.
And the news flash that I delivered to some of my fellow candidates on stage last week was the USSR doesn't exist anymore. Mm-hmm. It fell back in 1990. And now NATO's taking us closer to nuclear war with Russia when its supposed purpose was to deter nuclear war with the USSR. Mm-hmm.
I agree with that.
Bro,
this is such a hard analysis for me because Vivek says a lot of facts. but he's also full of lies and cap, you know. So it's really difficult to assess him, and I think that's part of his strategy.
Sure, it's interesting that these people continue to pretend like we're dealing with 1980s Russia. Like,
that's right.
It's been over for 30 years, man.
Yeah,
30
exactly.
years.
And the reality is, if you're still reciting slogans you memorized in 1980, you're not thinking.
Yeah, that's correct.
In fact, George
you're
Kennan,
not growing, you're not evolving.
You know what? There's this guy Kennan. He was probably the leading architect of our Cold War deterrence strategy. So even the neocons are going to have to respect this guy. In the late 90s, before he died, he said that NATO expansionism was our worst policy error in the post-Cold War era, and he was right about that. Yeah. And yet nobody seems to want to admit it today because they're still addicted to their muscle memory from 40 years ago. So anyway,
I love it.
I love it.
Yeah. Well, let's keep this going.
Vivek is $200 richer.
Yeah.
So far,
Cyan, are you tracking this?
Until you go for 400, man.
This? That's right.
All right. Cool. What we got?
Oh, it's me, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm going to take the COVID-19, the greatest reset, and I'm just going to go hard and go for the 1,000.
Go for 1,000?
Yeah.
All right, here we go. 98.2%.
What is the survival rate of COVID-19?
Yeah, that's it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
pretty good, man.
Yeah.
You were
like I said,
I thought it was actually higher than that, but maybe they're using COVID.
Yeah. COVID was definitely a scam.
World stats in that too.
I think
the American survival rate is higher.
This is the stat of people that actually get COVID with no comorbidities. I believe that's what that is. They're throwing all kinds of stats around.
No, I think actually if you include that survival rate, I think is actually even higher.
And they just came out with something this week, right?
They just came out with something saying that it was actually like less than 0.01% of people died of COVID.
Yeah.
But the problem was listen,
this is with including every comorbidity.
This is everything.
Yes.
But the thing is, even that stat, the reason, we didn't put in the show, we didn't talk about it on the last episode either, but it's like, that was 1 week. We're looking at one 7-day period out of the last, to me, that's just not enough weight.
Yeah.
So I mean, we try to be fair here. It's really
good. That's good.
What we do.
That's good. He's call it like it is. Good job, man. So you're richer than I am now, so I got to go for some hard ones. All right.
What we got?
His way of saying that, I'm actually richer than you, but it's funny.
Russia-American war for 800, so I can go for the tie here.
All right, here we go. On 26 September 2022, a series of clandestine bombings and subsequent underwater gas leaks occurred on these natural gas pipelines.
That was a very kind to the U.S. statement of that description. The Nord Stream 1 and 2.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, let's just call the fact we did it.
We did it.
We did do it.
Yeah,
can we also say that on 3?
Bombings, let's just say we did it. Yeah. And I think it was a mistake.
Yeah.
I think we should be focusing more.
Well, you think it was a mistake that we did it, or you think it was?
I think it was a mistake that we did it.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Yeah, I think it was a mistake that we did. We absolutely planned it.
Yeah,
and
it was
did
intentional.
It was intentional. I think that there's very little doubt about the fact that the U.S. and some combination of the U.S. and Ukraine did that.
Yeah.
I think we need to be going in the other direction, where we need to pull. This is what's driving Russia.
Absolutely.
Arms, right?
I don't know. This guy's good. I would probably vote for him over any other Republican candidate, including Trump. I mean, he's just super smart.
Right? Because if Russia's not able to be integrated into the economic infrastructure of the West, they're going to go to somebody else's infrastructure. That's China.
Yeah,
so
but
we need to be going in the other direction. Well, I mean, if you want to go to World War III, it's a great plan to get there.
If we have a compromised president who's calling plays like this, and
then we do have a compromised president.
Yeah, so then that's pushing Russia.
Just put yourself in
China.
Put yourself in Putin's shoes for a second, right? Like, just imagine the tables are turned, and forget it's not Putin because that's a bad word that makes people stop being able to think straight. Sort of like Trump, actually. Just forget the label. Say you're in his seat, okay? Now you see the U.S. president, so you're fighting a war against somebody.
And this is a really important skill to have, and it's really an important skill to executed in public, which is imagine yourself in someone else's shoes. I know that sounds really basic. I know that sounds really common, but I don't think most human beings, forget presidents, I don't think most human beings actually put themselves in someone else's shoes to understand why that other person took that specific action. So his ability to imagine himself within the shoes of the leader of Russia or the leader of China or the leader of North Korea or the leader of any other country, and imagining himself in those shoes and then analyzing why this person did what he did is probably one of the most important skills a U.S. president needs to have. So this is great. This is fantastic.
And the U.S. president's arming to the teeth your enemy. And then you find out that that enemy has been funding the family, particularly the unqualified son that couldn't get a job at
McDonald's,
at a fast food chain or anything else. I mean, that's generous. I mean, McDonald's, he couldn't get a good job, period, in the United States. Somehow finding one on the board of Burisma, Ukrainian energy company that's affiliated with the government.
That pays millions of
dollars.
They're like,
oh, this makes sense. Like they literally just bribed him to help them. That's what you might say. But the reality is now the U.S. is going in the opposite direction, where Russia has to turn to China, where we should be doing the opposite. Do a deal with Russia that says we will reopen economic relations with Russia. We will freeze the current lines of control in Ukraine. We will make a hard commitment that NATO, which we told you, James Baker told Gorbachev in 1990 that NATO would not expand 1 inch, not 1 inch was his word, past Germany. Well, we will stand by that commitment at least now, even though we haven't so far. We'll keep it now to say that Ukraine will not be admitted to NATO. But in return, you got to get yourself out of the Chinese. Get out of that Russia-China partnership.
Yeah, that would make
military
sense.
presence. That would make a lot of sense.
That would make sense. Like it would make a lot of sense.
And yet we're doing the exact opposite.
Yeah, and how does that make sense?
Well, it makes sense because somebody's getting rich off of it.
That's correct.
Facts.
That's right.
They've sold off our foreign policy.
It's interesting how people keep saying, "Oh, that doesn't make sense." Well, if you think about it just a little bit differently, it makes perfect sense.
It makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Love it.
All right,
Andy, you're up. We're tied right now, 1,000.
That's what we were trying to do. So. Yeah.
All right, let's go for. I want to stay on this COVID stuff because it's starting to get hot again. Let's go for COVID for 800.
This type of medical research genetically alters an organism in a way that may enhance the biological functions of gene products.
Oh, what is gain of function research?
That's it. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, gain of function. So that's sort of aligned with what you've been into, right? Business like biotech and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, we weren't like creating viruses that create pandemics in the world.
No. I know that. I didn't mean it like that. You get what I'm saying.
But yeah. I mean, I know this world.
You would have got this one.
Yeah. And you know what? We banned it, and yet they still did it in China,
dude.
And then it comes back, and rogue government agents, Fauci on down, funded it. There's actually a good lesson to learn on AI, by the way. So you think you ban something in the United States, if it happens in China, it's still going to come back.
Right.
So there's an interesting parallel.
There is a hard discussion to have about AI.
Yeah.
A very difficult one. And it's a hard problem to solve. Oh. But let's talk about this COVID just for a second, because I want to get your take on this.
Sure.
Now,
untruthful.
It's my opinion. Liable. It's my opinion that what has happened, when we consider the big picture of COVID and we look at all the things that we know now, we look at there's been gain of function research. We look at that, they purposefully withheld effective therapeutics from being accepted or talked about, or, when they have Joe Rogan talking about ivermectin, they're blasting him through the media. They're not allowing people, they're putting people in jail like America's frontline doctors for talking about hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin. My best friend had to watch his father die over a Zoom call. All right. So I feel very passionately about what's happened here. And when I look at what's happened here, and then the transfer of wealth that was gone along with it, basically the suppression of the middle class into more of a poverty class.
Yep.
This is crimes against humanity.
Facts.
I think so.
That's how I look at it. And I think this is stuff.
There has to be accountability.
Very, very strong accountability. And I heard you say on a show where you talked about putting down the weapons and not holding, not continuing to slit each other's throats.
If it's politicized.
Okay. So and listen, you tell me if you disagree, but I think examples need to be made. I think that people should be held accountable in such a way that for 100, 200, 300 years, people understand we do not do this to people. We do not intentionally infect people with a virus. We do not withhold their ability to treat the virus.
Yeah.
We do not transfer and shut down businesses from the middle class mom and pop to the biggest companies in the world. And I believe that everybody associated with this, from the media, the key people now, the media, Fauci, all these people who went along, at the decision makers,
yep,
deserve to be held accountable and made examples of. What's your opinion on that?
So I phrase it slightly differently.
Yeah.
I would less take the head on a stake approach, because I never want to be them, right? I just say one standard of the rule of law for everybody. No special exemptions. And what we're seeing right now is there are special exemptions. If anybody else did what Anthony Fauci did, literally intentionally violate a federal law that then actually causes millions of Americans to die as a consequence of that decision, they would be held accountable under the law. So I think it's simpler, which is just apply one standard of the rule of law to everybody. Period. That's it.
And this is why he can potentially be a fantastic U.S. president. When you take Andy's approach, the host of the podcast, and you compare that with Vivek's approach, just on its face, just factually, Vivek's approach is much better, because he's saying it's not just the decision makers or the ringleaders, right? It's for everybody, because the problem is, Andy, if you only chop off the head of decision makers or key people, there's always going to be someone else that wants to replace that person and be the leader. So that plan is, or that policy idea is ineffective and short-sighted. However, if you take Vivek's approach and you have this one law that applies to everybody and holds everybody accountable to whoever engages in illegal activity, all of them, whoever that does engage, right, is going to be put away and held accountable. And that's how you actually stop things like COVID-19 or things like illegal wars or things like the Tuskegee experiment that was done on Black people in the United States, right? So you don't want to only apply it to ringleaders or decision makers or just someone like Fauci, because there's always somebody that wants to replace Fauci to get that notoriety, to get the connections, to get the money, right? So you have to have a law or policy or procedures to hold anyone accountable who engages in illegal activity.
Convicted in a court of law pursuant to that standard of law, you will be punished to the proper full extent of that law.
So
all right, guys. Well, I think that's enough for me. But hey, I appreciate you guys joining me, and I will see you guys next time. All right. Take care. Have a good night. And have a good one. Cheers.